The crowd buzzed with an energy that felt almost alive, a restless tide of voices rising and falling in anticipation. Under the bright arena lights, the ring stood empty for now, a battleground waiting for its warriors. Tonight wasn't just another fight. This was legacy against ambition, experience against hunger. Canelo Alvarez, the undisputed king, the man who had ruled the super middleweight division with an iron fist, was about to face a challenger unlike any before. Edgar Berlanga, the undefeated knockout artist, the man with dynamite in his fists, had spent his entire career waiting for this moment. And now, under the scrutiny of millions, he had his chance to shake the sport to its core. The debate had raged for months. Was Berlanga truly ready for the biggest test of his career? Or was this just another young contender biting off more than he could chew? His early fights had been nothing short of electrifying 16 straight first-round knockouts, each one a brutal display of power that left the boxing world stunned. But critics pointed to the holes in his defense, the lack of experience at the elite level. Canelo had fought and beaten the best. He had stood across from champions, legends, men with far deeper RSUMs than Berlanga. And he had dismantled them all. But Berlanga was different. He carried himself with a swagger that wasn't just confidence, it was certainty. He wasn't stepping into the ring to survive. He was coming to take over. For years, he had been compared to the legends of Puerto Rican boxing, his name whispered in the same breath as Trinidad and Cotto. Now, he had a chance to prove he belonged among them. And what better way than by dethroning the Mexican superstar who had ruled the division unchallenged for so long? Canelo, though, had heard it all before. He had been the young lion once, hungry for a shot at greatness. He had stood in the ring against Floyd Mayweather as a rising star, only to learn the harshest lesson of his career. Since then, he had evolved into a near-perfect fighter, powerful, calculated, relentless. He had walked through bigger punchers, outboxed slicker opponents, and broken the will of countless challengers who had believed mistakenly that they had the formula to beat him. Berlanga was the latest in a long line of men who thought they had the answer. But Canelo had no intention of letting history be rewritten. The fight itself had been brewing long before contracts were signed. Berlanga had called out Canelo repeatedly, dismissing him as a fighter past his prime. The confidence was bold, maybe even reckless, but it had done its job. It had forced the conversation. Fans debated endlessly, was Berlanga the real deal, or was this another hype train about to be derailed? Canelo, never one to engage in trash talk, let his resume speak for itself. He didn't need words. His fists had written the story of his dominance, page after page, victory after victory. Fight night was finally here. The arena was packed, a sea of Mexican and Puerto Rican flags waving as chants filled the air. The walkouts were moments away, and the tension had never been higher. Berlanga stood in his locker room, his gloves already strapped on, his eyes locked in a predator's focus. Across the building, Canelo adjusted his trunks, rolling his shoulders, the picture of calm. This was routine for him, another night at the office. But something lingered in the air, something unspoken. This wasn't just another fight. This was something different. And soon, the world would see why. The stadium pulsed with raw anticipation as the fighters emerged from the tunnels. Berlanga moved with the energy of a man who had waited for this moment his entire life, his eyes locked straight ahead, unblinking. Canelo, draped in the confidence of a champion who had seen it all, walked with measured purpose. The contrast between them was striking, youthful fire versus seasoned steel. The fans roared, their voices colliding in a deafening wave, split between those who wanted to see the king remain on his throne and those who hoped for a new era to begin. As the fighters stepped into the ring, the atmosphere shifted, thick with something unspoken. Berlanga's corner whispered last-minute instructions, but he barely seemed to hear them. His mind was elsewhere, already deep in the fight before the first punch had been thrown. Across from him, Canelo rolled his neck, his expression unreadable. He had been here too many times to be rattled, but there was something about Berlanga's presence, something different from the others who had come before. Maybe it was the way he stood, unshaken, or maybe it was the way his eyes never wavered. The bell rang, and the fight exploded into motion. Berlanga came out fast, firing a sharp jab, testing the waters. Canelo, ever patient, slipped the shot effortlessly and took a small step forward, applying pressure without throwing a punch. Berlanga launched a left hook, fast and powerful, but Canelo's head movement was pristine, just a slight tilt, just enough to make the punch miss by inches. Then came the counter. A sharp right hand cracked against Berlanga's guard, jolting him but not discouraging him. He grinned, nodding as if to say, "I expected that." The early rounds became a chess match, but the tension in the air hinted at something more volatile waiting to erupt. Berlanga, usually the aggressor, found himself forced to think, to adjust, as Canelo's defense proved nearly impenetrable. The young contender was used to fights ending in fireworks, but this was something else. Canelo's presence alone was suffocating, his every movement calculated, each feint designed to bait a mistake. Berlanga, for all his power, couldn't find a clean opening. Then, in the fourth round, the unexpected happened. Berlanga feinted a jab and, instead of committing to a follow-up, pulled back just in time to avoid a counter, a small, almost imperceptible adjustment, but one that signaled something crucial. He wasn't just relying on power. He was learning. The next exchange came, and this time he slipped a right hand that had landed earlier, firing a sharp left uppercut that found its mark. It wasn't a knockout punch, but it was something just as important. It was proof. Proof that Berlanga could adapt. Proof that he wasn't just another name on Canelo's hit list. The moment changed everything. Canelo, for the first time in the fight, acknowledged it with a small nod. The crowd felt it too. This wasn't going to be another routine dismantling. Berlanga had come prepared, and he wasn't here for a paycheck, he was here for a crown. Then came the twist no one saw coming. Midway through the fight, as both men began to settle into their rhythm, something shifted. Berlanga pressed forward, cutting off the ring with more precision than expected, forcing Canelo into positions he didn't want to be in. It was subtle at first, small steps, minor adjustments, but then, in the blink of an eye, Berlanga landed a body shot that made Canelo hesitate for the first time. It wasn't just a good punch. It was different. Canelo had taken body shots before, endured wars against fighters known for their power, but this one had an effect. His expression remained unreadable, but his footwork betrayed a moment of discomfort. Berlanga saw it. His corner saw it. The fans saw it. And just like that, the fight had changed. Canelo's stance shifted, just slightly, but to those who had studied him for years, it was a crack in the foundation. The body shot had done something, whether it was pain, exhaustion, or just surprise. No one could say for sure, but Berlanga saw an opportunity and pounced. He feinted high, forcing Canelo's guard up, then ripped another left hook to the body. This time, there was no hiding it. Canelo's breath hitched, his movement slowed for a fraction of a second. The arena erupted. Berlanga, sensing blood, pressed forward, throwing in combinations instead of single power shots. He wasn't just swinging wildly, he was placing them, targeting the same spot, testing Canelo's endurance in a way few had dared to. The crowd, divided before, now felt united in sheer disbelief. For the first time in a long time, Canelo Alvarez looked human. But champions don't break easily. Canelo adjusted, planting his feet and firing a short uppercut in the pocket, snapping Berlanga's head back. The challenger stumbled but didn't retreat. He fired back with a right hand that grazed Canelo's chin, and for a brief moment, they stood toe-to-toe, exchanging punches like two men who had abandoned strategy in favor of sheer will. Then came the moment no one expected. In the 8th round, just as Berlanga was beginning to dictate the pace, Canelo did something that sent shockwaves through the arena. He took a step back, not out of caution, but with the intent of drawing Berlanga in. And it worked. Berlanga, emboldened by his success, overcommitted on a right hand. It was the mistake Canelo had been waiting for. A split second later, a counter left hook detonated against Berlanga's jaw. The sound echoed, and everything seemed to slow. Berlanga's legs betrayed him, wobbling as if the canvas had turned to water beneath him. He stumbled back, his mind willing him to stay up while his body fought against it. The referee watched closely, ready to intervene. But he didn't go down. Berlanga, through sheer determination, planted his feet and threw a jab weak, desperate but enough to show he was still there. Canelo, a hunter at heart, moved in to finish the job, but something in Berlanga's eyes made him hesitate. There was no fear, no sign of surrender. Just the look of a man who refused to be broken. The final rounds became a battle of attrition. Berlanga, his power still dangerous, but his energy fading, fought to land something meaningful. Canelo, knowing he was ahead, remained composed, picking his shots, reminding the world why he was still the face of boxing. The final bell rang, and the two warriors stepped back, breathing heavily, their faces marked by the war they had just waged. The judges rendered their decision Canelo by unanimous decision. The result was expected, but the night had been anything but predictable. Berlanga had entered the ring a challenger. He had left it something more. As they met in the center of the ring, Canelo leaned in and whispered something in Berlanga's ear before raising his hand for the crowd to see. Whatever was said didn't matter. The message was clear. This wasn't an end. It was a beginning.